On November 8, 2025, at precisely 14:47 UTC, every atomic clock aboard the International Space Station experienced something that should be impossible according to our understanding of physics. They all slowed down by exactly 0.3 seconds, not 0.29, not 0.31, exactly 0.3 of a second. When objects in space affect time itself with mathematical precision, we're no longer talking about normal celestial mechanics. We're talking about something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the universe. The object responsible for this temporal anomaly has a name: Comet 3I Atlas. But after what happened on November 8th, a growing number of scientists are questioning whether we should still call it a comet at all. The story begins 3 months ago, when the Mauna Kea Observatory first detected 3I Atlas approaching our solar system from the direction of the Andromeda Galaxy. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead astronomer who made the discovery, described it as unremarkable at first glance. A typical long-period comet, she thought, with an estimated diameter of approximately 2.4 kilometers and a standard hyperbolic trajectory that would take it past Earth at a safe distance of 4.2 million kilometers. But Dr. Chen was wrong, spectacularly wrong. The first hint that something was unusual came during routine spectroscopic analysis. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez from the European Southern Observatory was studying the comet's composition when he noticed anomalous readings in the hydroxyl absorption lines. The spectral signature was unlike anything I've seen in 23 years of comet research, Rodriguez reported in his preliminary findings. The ice composition suggested the presence of heavy water deuterium at concentrations that shouldn't exist naturally. Heavy water deuterium. Most people don't realize that this isotope is incredibly rare in natural comets, typically making up less than 0.016% of a comet's ice composition. In 3I Atlas, the concentration was measuring at 2.7%. That's nearly 200 times higher than it should be. Such concentrations are typically found only in artificial nuclear processes or in the cores of dying stars. But the deuterium anomaly was just the beginning. On September 15th, Dr. Elena Vasquez at the Atacama Large Millimeter Array detected something that made her question her own instruments. The comet was emitting thermal radiation patterns that didn't match its visible size. According to her calculations, the object was radiating heat as if it were 3 times larger than what optical telescopes could observe. She ran the analysis 17 times, checking for equipment malfunction. The results remained consistent. Either our instruments are experiencing a coordinated failure across multiple observatories, Vasquez wrote in her encrypted report to the International Astronomical Union, or this object has internal heat sources that we cannot explain through conventional comet physics. Internal heat sources in a comet traveling through the vacuum of space should be impossible. Comets are essentially dirty snowballs, frozen remnants from the early solar system. They don't generate their own heat. They certainly don't maintain consistent internal temperatures that exceed their surface emissions. Yet 3I Atlas was doing exactly that. As September turned to October, more observatories began reporting irregularities. The Very Large Telescope in Chile detected periodic variations in the comet's brightness that occurred every 47 minutes and 13 seconds. Not approximately 47 minutes, exactly 47 minutes and 13 seconds, measured to the millisecond across dozens of observation cycles. Natural objects don't operate on precise schedules. Comet rotation periods typically vary slightly due to outgassing, gravitational influences, and structural changes as they approach the Sun. But 3I Atlas maintained its rotational period with the precision of an atomic clock. Dr. James Wellington from Cambridge Observatory described it as more precise than our most accurate satellites. The precision itself wasn't the strangest part. It was what happened during each rotation cycle that sent ripples of unease through the astronomical community. Every 47 minutes and 13 seconds, ground-based radio telescopes detected a brief but distinct electromagnetic pulse emanating from 3I Atlas. The pulse lasted exactly 1.3 seconds and occurred at a frequency of 1420.405 MHz. Anyone familiar with radio astronomy would immediately recognize this frequency. It's the hydrogen line, the most fundamental frequency in the universe, used by SETI researchers as a universal calling card for potential extraterrestrial communications. Dr. Robert Kim from the National Radio Astronomy Observatory was the first to notice the pattern within the pattern. The electromagnetic pulses weren't random. They followed a mathematical sequence that repeated every 12 cycles. Prime numbers: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, 31, 37. Then the sequence would begin again. Prime numbers are considered one of the most obvious signs of intelligence because they have no natural occurrence in astronomical phenomena. They represent pure mathematical concepts that only arise through conscious thought and calculation. When objects in space start broadcasting prime number sequences, the scientific community pays attention. When those objects also manipulate time itself, the scientific community starts to panic. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The time anomaly didn't reveal itself until 3I Atlas made its closest approach to the International Space Station. On November 6th, as the comet reached its nearest point to Earth's orbital path, Mission Control at Johnson Space Center began receiving reports of equipment malfunctions from the ISS crew. Commander Lisa Park reported that multiple chronometers aboard the station were showing slight but consistent discrepancies. The discrepancies seemed to correlate with the comet's position relative to the station. Initially, Mission Control attributed the timing issues to electromagnetic interference. Space is filled with radiation sources that can affect sensitive electronic equipment. But when Dr. Amanda Foster from the Naval Observatory analyzed the telemetry data, she discovered something that made her immediately classify her findings as restricted information. The timing discrepancies weren't random equipment failures. They were systematic temporal distortions that followed a precise mathematical relationship to the comet's distance from the space station. As 3I Atlas drew closer, time aboard the ISS moved progressively slower relative to ground-based atomic clocks. The effect was minimal but measurable, creating a temporal gradient that defied our understanding of relativistic physics. Einstein's theory of general relativity predicts that massive objects can create gravitational time dilation effects. The more massive an object, the greater its ability to slow time in its vicinity. But 3I Atlas, based on its observed size and composition, should have a mass roughly equivalent to a small mountain. Such an object should produce gravitational effects so minimal that they would be undetectable by current instruments. Yet the time dilation effects were not only detectable, they were impossible to ignore. Dr. Foster's calculations revealed that 3I Atlas was behaving gravitationally, as if it had a mass 50 times greater than its physical size suggested. This presented a paradox that challenged fundamental assumptions about matter and space-time. How could an object appear to have the mass of a small asteroid while looking like a typical comet? The answer, according to an increasing number of theoretical physicists, might lie in technologies that we don't yet understand. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Tokyo Institute of Technology was among the first to publicly suggest that 3I Atlas might not be a natural object at all. In a paper published in the Journal of Theoretical Astrophysics on October 23, Tanaka proposed that the observed anomalies could be explained if the comet contained an artificial core made from exotic matter with properties unlike anything found naturally in our universe. Exotic matter, a theoretical form of material with negative energy density, has been proposed as a necessary component for several advanced physics concepts, including faster-than-light travel and time manipulation. While no exotic matter has ever been detected or created in laboratory conditions, its theoretical properties would explain exactly what observers were seeing in 3I Atlas. An exotic matter core could account for the object's impossible mass-to-size ratio. It could explain the precise electromagnetic pulses and the mathematical sequences. Most importantly, it could explain the time dilation effects that were about to become impossible to dismiss as measurement errors. On November 8th at 1447 UTC, 3I Atlas reached its point of closest approach to the International Space Station, passing within 890,000 kilometers of the orbital laboratory. At that exact moment, every atomic clock aboard the ISS, every chronometer, every timekeeping device simultaneously and inexplicably slowed down by 0.3 seconds. Commander Park's voice, transmitted to Mission Control at exactly the moment the anomaly occurred, was recorded and analyzed by dozens of independent research facilities. The audio recording revealed something that sent shockwaves through the physics community. Park's voice, during the moment of closest approach, was demonstrably slowed down by the same 0.3-second interval that affected the station's clocks. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an equipment malfunction. It was evidence that time itself aboard the International Space Station had been temporarily altered by the presence of 3I Atlas. But the space station wasn't the only location experiencing temporal anomalies. Dr. Catherine Mills from the Greenwich Observatory reported that her facility's master atomic clock, synchronized with the global positioning system, showed a 0.15-second deviation during the same period. The Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland detected a 0.09-second anomaly. The National Institute of Standards and Technology in Colorado measured a 0.06-second variation. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The closer an atomic clock was to 3I Atlas's trajectory, the greater the temporal distortion it experienced. This suggested that the comet was creating a localized field of gravitational time dilation that extended far beyond what should be possible for an object of its apparent size. Dr. Mills immediately began calculating the mass that would be required to produce such effects. Her results indicated that 3I Atlas would need to have the gravitational influence of an object roughly equivalent to a small moon. The mathematics were undeniable, even though they contradicted every visual observation of the comet's actual size. Something was very wrong with our understanding of what 3I Atlas actually was. The temporal anomalies weren't the only impossible events occurring during the comet's closest approach. Ground-based observatories around the world began reporting gravitational lensing effects that shouldn't exist around an object of the comet's visible mass. Light from stars positioned behind 3I Atlas was arriving at Earth with measurable delays, as if space-time itself was being curved by the comet's passage. Dr. Hassan al-Rashid from the Mauna Loa Observatory detected the lensing effects using high-precision photometry techniques. Stars that should have been visible behind the comet's trajectory were appearing several arc-minutes displaced from their expected positions. More disturbing, the light from these stars was reaching Earth approximately 0.8 seconds later than it should have, based on the speed of light and the distance traveled. This represented a fundamental violation of our understanding of physics. Light travels at a constant speed in a vacuum, approximately 299,192,158 meters per second. It doesn't slow down because of gravitational fields unless those fields are extraordinarily powerful, like those found near black holes or neutron stars. A comet with the apparent mass of 3I Atlas should produce gravitational effects so minimal that they would be completely undetectable using current technology. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Multiple independent observatories were recording identical results. Light was being slowed, time was being distorted, and gravitational effects were occurring that required the presence of exotic physics or advanced technology. Dr. al-Rashid's report, submitted to the International Astronomical Union on November 9th, included a recommendation that 3I Atlas be immediately reclassified from a natural celestial object to an object of unknown origin requiring urgent investigation. His report was classified within hours of submission. The classification wasn't random. By November 10th, governments around the world had begun quietly restricting access to observational data related to 3I Atlas. Research facilities that had been freely sharing their findings suddenly found themselves bound by national security restrictions. Independent astronomers discovered that their access to major telescope networks was being temporarily suspended for routine maintenance. Something about 3I Atlas had triggered responses at the highest levels of government and scientific institutions. The object that had started as an interesting astronomical curiosity was now being treated as a potential threat to national security. But the restrictions couldn't suppress what had already been observed. Too many astronomers had already recorded too much data. The truth about 3I Atlas was already spreading through unofficial channels, discussed in encrypted communications between researchers who understood the implications of what they had witnessed. On November 11th, Dr. Maria Santos from the Brazilian National Observatory released an unauthorized report that compiled observations from 17 different research facilities. Her report, distributed through academic networks before government officials could suppress it, revealed the full scope of the anomalies associated with 3I Atlas. According to Santos's compilation, the comet had been observed altering its trajectory on 3 separate occasions during its approach to Earth. Each trajectory change occurred without any visible outgassing or fragmentation that typically causes course corrections in natural comets. The changes were precise, calculated, and appeared to be deliberately designed to optimize the object's gravitational effects on Earth-based observation equipment. Natural comets don't change course deliberately. They don't optimize their trajectories for maximum observational impact. They don't emit precise mathematical sequences or create localized time dilation fields. They certainly don't possess internal mass distributions that contradict their visible composition. 3I Atlas was doing all of these things. Santos's report included a disturbing conclusion that had been reached independently by research teams in 7 different countries. Based on the observed gravitational effects, electromagnetic emissions, and trajectory modifications, 3I Atlas appeared to be under some form of intelligent control. The implications of this conclusion were staggering. If Santos and her colleagues were correct, then 3I Atlas wasn't a comet at all. It was an artificial object, possibly a spacecraft, disguised to appear like a natural celestial body. An object with technologies capable of manipulating time, space, and gravity in ways that exceeded our current understanding of physics. But who or what could possess such advanced capabilities? And why would they disguise a spacecraft as a comet? Dr. Santos's report proposed several possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The object could be a probe from an advanced extraterrestrial civilization sent to study Earth while maintaining the appearance of a natural phenomenon. It could be evidence of a previously unknown physics that allows for the creation of artificial gravitational fields and time manipulation technologies. Or it could represent something far more concerning, a reconnaissance mission preceding a larger contact event. Whatever the truth about 3I Atlas, one fact was becoming increasingly clear. The object had demonstrated capabilities that fundamentally challenged our understanding of what was possible in the universe. Technologies that could manipulate time, gravity, and space itself suggested a level of scientific advancement far beyond anything achieved by human civilization. As 3I Atlas continued its trajectory away from Earth, the temporal anomalies gradually subsided. By November 12th, atomic clocks around the world had returned to normal synchronization. The gravitational lensing effects had disappeared. The electromagnetic pulses had faded to background levels. But the questions raised by the comet's passage remained. In the space of 5 days, 3I Atlas had demonstrated technologies that could rewrite our understanding of physics and our place in the universe. It had proven that objects in space could possess capabilities beyond our current scientific framework. Most importantly, it had left behind evidence that somewhere in the universe, intelligence existed with the power to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Intelligence that had chosen to visit our solar system disguised as something harmless and familiar. Intelligence that had demonstrated its capabilities just long enough to ensure that we would know it had been here. The question that kept Dr. Santos awake at night, the question that was beginning to haunt astronomers around the world, was simple but terrifying. If 3I Atlas was a scout, a reconnaissance probe testing our detection capabilities and our understanding of advanced physics, what was it scouting for? And when would we see the next object like it? The answers to these questions lay hidden in the data that governments were now desperately trying to classify and suppress. But science has a way of revealing truth regardless of human attempts to contain it. The observations had been made, the measurements had been recorded, the evidence existed in too many locations to be completely erased. 3I Atlas had shown us that we were not alone in the universe. More importantly, it had shown us that we were not the most technologically advanced intelligence in existence. We were being observed by entities with capabilities that made our greatest scientific achievements appear primitive by comparison. The comet that had seemingly appeared from nowhere and would soon disappear back into the depths of interstellar space had accomplished something unprecedented in human history. It had provided undeniable proof that advanced technology existed beyond our planet. Technology capable of effects that we could barely measure, much less understand or replicate. As November progressed and 3I Atlas grew smaller and fainter in our telescopes, the astronomical community found itself grappling with a new reality. The universe was far more complex and populated than we had imagined. Somewhere among the stars, intelligence existed with the power to visit our solar system at will, demonstrate impossible technologies, and then vanish back into the cosmic dark. The knowledge that such capabilities existed somewhere in the universe would forever change how humanity viewed its place in the cosmos. We were no longer alone, and we were no longer the most advanced intelligence in our local region of space. The question now was what we would do with this knowledge, and how we would prepare for the possibility that the next visitor might not be content to simply observe and leave. The next object, like 3I Atlas, might have different intentions entirely. But understanding those intentions would require first understanding the technology we had witnessed, and that understanding would challenge every assumption we had made about the laws of physics and the limits of what was possible in the universe. The cover-up began within hours of Dr. Maria Santos's unauthorized report reaching the international scientific community. On November 12th, at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Santos received a visit from two representatives of the Brazilian National Security Agency who informed her that her research on 3I Atlas had been classified under the National Defense Authorization Act. Her observatory's internet access was suspended, her personal communications were monitored, and her research data was confiscated for national security review. But Santos wasn't the only scientist experiencing sudden government interest in her work. Dr. Catherine Mills from Greenwich Observatory found herself summoned to an emergency meeting with officials from the British Ministry of Defense. Dr. Hassan al-Rashid was informed that his research visa in the United States had been temporarily suspended pending review. Dr. Elena Vasquez received notification that her funding from the Chilean National Science Foundation had been redirected to projects of higher national priority. Within 72 hours of 3I Atlas reaching its closest approach to Earth, virtually every astronomer who had published findings about the comet's anomalous properties found themselves either silenced by government intervention or suddenly unable to access the equipment necessary to continue their research. The message was clear. Someone with considerable authority had decided that the public should not learn about what 3I Atlas had demonstrated during its passage through our solar system. But the attempts at suppression had come too late. The scientific community operates on principles of open communication and peer review. Data sharing between observatories happens automatically through established networks. By the time government officials began their classification efforts, copies of the observational data had already been distributed to hundreds of research facilities across 6 continents. Dr. James Wellington from Cambridge Observatory had been expecting the government intervention. As soon as he detected the first temporal anomalies on November 8th, he had begun distributing copies of his data through encrypted channels to colleagues around the world. Wellington understood that discoveries of this magnitude would inevitably attract the attention of national security agencies. When you observe something that challenges the fundamental laws of physics, Wellington later wrote in his encrypted communications, you have a responsibility to preserve that information regardless of what governments might prefer. Science belongs to humanity, not to any single nation or security apparatus. Wellington's foresight proved crucial. While government officials were confiscating hard drives and shutting down official research programs, copies of the 3I Atlas data continued to circulate through informal networks of astronomers who understood the historical significance of what they had witnessed. The data told a story that became more extraordinary with each detailed analysis. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Tokyo Institute of Technology, working from copies of spectroscopic data provided by Wellington, made a discovery that explained some of the most puzzling aspects of 3I Atlas's behavior. Hidden within the comet's electromagnetic emissions was a secondary signal pattern that had been masked by the more obvious prime number sequence. The secondary pattern was far more complex, consisting of modulated frequency variations that occurred at precise intervals throughout each 47-minute rotation cycle. When Tanaka applied advanced signal processing algorithms to isolate these variations, he discovered something that sent shockwaves through the underground network of astronomers studying the classified data. The frequency variations contained embedded mathematical constants: pi, the golden ratio; Euler's number, the fine structure constant; universal mathematical relationships that any scientifically advanced civilization would recognize as proof of intelligence and mathematical sophistication. But the constants weren't just randomly embedded in the signal. They were arranged in a specific sequence that told a story about the technological capabilities of whoever or whatever was controlling 3I Atlas. The sequence began with basic mathematical constants that would be familiar to any civilization that had developed advanced physics. Pi and the golden ratio represented mathematical concepts that arise naturally from geometric relationships. But as the sequence progressed, it included constants that could only be derived through advanced understanding of quantum mechanics, relativity, and theoretical physics. The fine structure constant, approximately 0.007297, defines the strength of electromagnetic interactions between elementary particles. It's a dimensionless number that appears to be fine-tuned for the existence of stable matter and complex chemistry. Any civilization that could embed this constant in an electromagnetic signal would have to possess a sophisticated understanding of quantum field theory. But the sequence didn't stop with constants known to human science. Tanaka identified 17 additional mathematical relationships embedded in the signal that didn't correspond to any constants recognized by terrestrial physics. These unknown constants appeared to follow logical patterns similar to the known ones, suggesting they represented physical relationships that human science hadn't yet discovered. Whoever created this signal, Tanaka wrote in his analysis, is teaching us mathematics and physics beyond our current understanding. They're showing us constants that describe physical relationships we haven't yet learned to measure or manipulate. The implications were staggering. 3I Atlas wasn't just demonstrating advanced technology, it was attempting to communicate scientific knowledge. The object appeared to be functioning as an educational probe, designed to reveal new physics to any civilization capable of detecting and analyzing its signals. This discovery led to a fundamental re-examination of 3I Atlas's behavior during its passage through the solar system. Dr. Robert Kim from the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, working from data copies provided through the underground network, began analyzing the timing of the electromagnetic pulses in relation to the comet's trajectory changes. What he discovered suggested a level of technological sophistication that exceeded even the most optimistic predictions about advanced extraterrestrial capabilities. The 3 trajectory changes observed during 3I Atlas's approach had occurred at precisely calculated moments to maximize the comet's gravitational effects on specific Earth-based observatories. The timing wasn't random. It was engineered to ensure that the most advanced astronomical facilities on Earth would be positioned to detect and measure the temporal anomalies. Kim's calculations revealed that the trajectory changes had been designed with detailed knowledge of Earth's rotation, the orbital positions of satellites, and the operational schedules of major observatories. This suggested that whoever was controlling 3I Atlas possessed comprehensive information about human astronomical capabilities and had planned the comet's passage to optimize scientific observation opportunities. This wasn't a casual flyby, Kim concluded in his encrypted report. This was a carefully orchestrated demonstration designed to reveal specific technological capabilities to Earth's scientific community. Someone wanted us to see exactly what we observed, when we observed it. The precision of the planning suggested capabilities that went far beyond simple spaceflight technology. It required real-time monitoring of Earth's astronomical infrastructure, predictive modeling of human scientific responses, and the ability to make trajectory adjustments with accuracy measured in meters across distances of millions of kilometers. But perhaps most significantly, it demonstrated that whoever was controlling 3I Atlas understood enough about human psychology and scientific methodology to predict exactly how Earth's astronomers would respond to the anomalous observations. This psychological sophistication became even more apparent when Dr. Amanda Foster completed her analysis of the temporal distortion patterns. Foster had been studying the 0.3-second time dilation effect experienced by the International Space Station when she noticed something that initially seemed like a measurement error. The temporal distortion hadn't affected all systems aboard the station equally. Life support systems, communication arrays, and navigation computers had all experienced the full 0.3-second delay. But the station's scientific instruments, particularly those designed for astronomical observation, had experienced a slightly different effect. The astronomical instruments had been temporally accelerated rather than delayed. While the rest of the station's systems slowed down by 0.3 seconds, the scientific equipment had sped up by exactly 0.7 seconds. This meant that during the moment of closest approach, the station's astronomical instruments had actually gained 1 full second of temporal advantage over Earth-based clocks. This selective temporal manipulation was impossible, according to known physics. Time dilation effects should affect all matter equally within a given gravitational field. The fact that 3I Atlas could selectively accelerate or decelerate specific types of equipment suggested technology that could manipulate time at the quantum level, targeting individual devices based on their function rather than their physical properties. What we observed, Foster wrote in her classified analysis, represents technology that can distinguish between different types of electronic equipment and apply selective temporal effects based on the intended use of each device. This suggests scanning and analysis capabilities that can identify the purpose and function of human technology from a distance of nearly 1 million kilometers. The selective temporal manipulation had a clear purpose. By accelerating the station's astronomical instruments, 3I Atlas had ensured that those devices would capture additional observational data during the critical moment of closest approach. The extra second of operation time had allowed the instruments to record gravitational wave fluctuations that would have been missed otherwise. Dr. Foster's analysis of these gravitational wave recordings revealed patterns that provided crucial insights into the physics underlying 3I Atlas's impossible capabilities. The gravitational waves detected during the temporal anomaly didn't match the patterns produced by any known astronomical phenomena. Instead of the smooth, predictable waves generated by orbiting masses or colliding objects, the waves showed discrete, quantized fluctuations that suggested artificial generation. The wave patterns contained embedded information structures similar to those found in the electromagnetic signals, mathematical constants, physical relationships, and what appeared to be engineering specifications for technologies that human science couldn't yet comprehend. One section of the gravitational wave data contained what Dr. Tanaka identified as blueprints for exotic matter manipulation. The patterns showed how stable negative energy states could be created and maintained using controlled quantum field fluctuations. Another section appeared to describe methods for generating localized gravitational fields using electromagnetic resonance techniques. They're not just demonstrating their technology, Tanaka realized. They're providing instruction manuals for how to build it. This revelation led to a fundamental re-examination of 3I Atlas's mission profile. The object wasn't simply a reconnaissance probe or a demonstration of advanced capabilities. It was functioning as a technological gift, designed to accelerate human scientific development by providing blueprints for technologies that would otherwise take centuries to discover independently. But the gift came with implications that kept the underground network of astronomers awake at night. Dr. Wellington raised the question that nobody wanted to confront directly. Why would an advanced extraterrestrial civilization choose to share their most sophisticated technologies with a species that has barely achieved spaceflight capability? What do they expect us to do with these blueprints, and what do they want in return? The answers might lie in the final section of data that governments around the world were most desperate to suppress. Hidden within the most complex gravitational wave patterns was information that appeared to describe Earth's future rather than advanced physics. Tanaka's team had identified what seemed to be predictive models showing the development of human civilization over the next several decades. According to these models, humanity was approaching a critical transition point that would determine whether our species successfully evolved into a spacefaring civilization or faced extinction from environmental collapse, resource depletion, or technological disasters. The models suggested that without technological intervention, human civilization had approximately a 37% probability of surviving the next 50 years. Climate change, nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence risks, and resource conflicts were identified as primary extinction factors. But the models also showed that the technologies demonstrated by 3I Atlas could fundamentally alter these probabilities. Exotic matter manipulation could provide unlimited clean energy. Gravitational control technologies could enable efficient space travel and terraforming capabilities. Time manipulation could allow for accelerated research and development programs. They're not giving us these technologies out of altruism, Wellington concluded. They're providing the tools necessary for our species to survive its current developmental crisis. This is an intervention designed to prevent human extinction. The implications of this conclusion were profound and disturbing. If Wellington's interpretation was correct, then 3I Atlas represented contact with an extraterrestrial civilization that had been monitoring human development and had decided that our species required technological assistance to survive. But such assistance would come with obligations and expectations. Advanced civilizations don't typically share their most sophisticated technologies without expecting something in return. Dr. Santos, working from her forced exile from official research, began analyzing the timing of 3I Atlas's arrival in relation to current global crises. What she discovered suggested that the comet's appearance hadn't been coincidental. The object had arrived during a period when human civilization was simultaneously facing climate change acceleration, increasing geopolitical tensions, rapid artificial intelligence development, and growing resource conflicts. The timing suggested that whoever had sent 3I Atlas had been monitoring these developments and had determined that intervention was necessary. "We're being evaluated," Santos wrote in her underground analysis. 3I Atlas was a test of our scientific capabilities and our readiness to receive advanced technologies. Based on how we responded to the demonstration, decisions are being made about our species' future. The test interpretation explained many of the puzzling aspects of 3I Atlas's behavior. The precise timing, the careful orchestration of observable effects, the embedding of educational content in the signals, all suggested a civilization that was assessing human scientific sophistication and readiness for technological advancement. But tests can be passed or failed, and the response of Earth's governments to the 3I Atlas observations suggested that humanity might not be scoring well. The immediate classification of research data, the suppression of scientific communication, and the prioritization of national security over scientific discovery were exactly the opposite of what an advanced civilization would want to see from a species being considered for technological assistance. Dr. Kim identified this contradiction in his analysis of government responses. If 3I Atlas was designed to evaluate our readiness for contact with advanced civilizations, then our government's reflexive secrecy and militaristic responses are demonstrating exactly the kind of primitive tribalism that would disqualify us from receiving further assistance. The underground network of astronomers found themselves facing an unprecedented dilemma. They possessed evidence of contact with an advanced extraterrestrial civilization that appeared willing to share technologies capable of ensuring human survival. But their own governments were actively suppressing this evidence and preventing the scientific community from responding appropriately to what might be the most important opportunity in human history. Some members of the network began advocating for public disclosure of the 3I Atlas data regardless of government restrictions. Dr. Mills argued that humanity had a right to know about contact with extraterrestrial intelligence and access to technologies that could address climate change and resource scarcity. Others, led by Dr. Al-Rashid, worried that premature public disclosure could trigger panic, social instability, or even more aggressive government suppression of the research. The debate within the underground network reflected a larger question about humanity's readiness for contact with advanced civilizations. If we couldn't even handle evidence of such contact without immediately classifying it and suppressing scientific research, how could we expect to successfully integrate technologies that could manipulate time, gravity, and space itself? Meanwhile, 3I Atlas continued its journey away from Earth, growing fainter in telescopes each day as it headed back toward interstellar space. But the comet's departure didn't mark the end of its influence on human scientific understanding. Analysis of the embedded technological blueprints was revealing possibilities that seemed almost too extraordinary to believe. The exotic matter manipulation techniques could potentially provide access to unlimited energy resources. The gravitational control technologies could make interstellar travel practical within human lifespans. The time manipulation capabilities could accelerate scientific research and technological development to unprecedented levels. But implementing these technologies would require international cooperation on a scale never before achieved by human civilization. The knowledge provided by 3I Atlas couldn't be developed by any single nation or research institution. It would require the combined resources and expertise of Earth's entire scientific community. Unfortunately, that same scientific community was being systematically dismantled by government security agencies determined to control access to information that they viewed as potentially dangerous to national interests. The tragic irony wasn't lost on the astronomers who understood what was happening. Humanity had been offered a gift that could ensure our species' long-term survival and development into a truly advanced civilization. But our own political and security institutions were preventing us from accepting or properly utilizing that gift. As November progressed toward December, reports began emerging from the underground network about secondary observations of 3I Atlas that had been missed during the initial analysis period. Dr. Foster discovered that the comet had left behind something that nobody had noticed during the excitement surrounding the temporal anomalies and electromagnetic signals. At the exact location where 3I Atlas had achieved its closest approach to Earth, space-based telescopes were detecting residual gravitational wave emissions that persisted long after the comet had passed. The emissions were faint but consistent, suggesting that the comet had somehow altered the fabric of space-time in a way that created permanent changes to local gravitational conditions. Analysis of these residual effects revealed that 3I Atlas had essentially installed a gravitational beacon at the edge of Earth's orbital space. The beacon was generating a steady signal that could be detected by anyone with sufficiently advanced gravitational wave detection equipment. "It's a marker," Foster realized. "They've marked our location in space-time with a signal that any advanced civilization could detect. We're no longer hidden." The implications were staggering. For the entire history of human civilization, Earth had been effectively invisible to potential extraterrestrial visitors unless they happened to be looking directly at our solar system at the right time. Radio signals from human technology had been spreading outward for less than a century, and even those signals would be difficult to detect beyond a few dozen light years. But the gravitational beacon left by 3I Atlas was broadcasting our location across interstellar distances, using technology that could be detected by any civilization advanced enough to possess gravitational wave astronomy capabilities. Humanity had been added to some kind of galactic directory of emerging civilizations. The question that terrified the astronomers analyzing this data was simple: who else had access to that directory, and what were their intentions toward newly discovered species like humanity? 3I Atlas had marked the beginning of a new era in human history, an era where our species would no longer develop in isolation, where our planet would be known to intelligences possessing technologies that exceeded our understanding of physical law. Whether that era would bring unprecedented opportunities for growth and development or challenges that could threaten our very existence remained to be determined by decisions being made in secret meetings between government officials who might not fully understand what they were dealing with. But one thing was certain: the age of human isolation in the universe was over. 3I Atlas had ensured that Earth would never again be unknown to the advanced civilizations that inhabited the galaxy. The only question now was what those civilizations planned to do with their knowledge of our existence. The discovery of the gravitational beacon triggered a cascade of realizations that fundamentally changed how the underground network of astronomers understood the true scope of what 3I Atlas had accomplished during its brief passage through our solar system. What had initially appeared to be a single demonstration of advanced technology was revealing itself to be part of a far more complex and systematic intervention in human development. Dr. Amanda Foster's analysis of the gravitational beacon's signal characteristics revealed that the device wasn't simply broadcasting Earth's location to potential observers across the galaxy. The beacon was transmitting a comprehensive data package about human civilization, updated in real time based on ongoing observation of Earth's technological and social development. Working with stolen computational time on classified government supercomputers, Foster managed to decode portions of the beacon's transmission content. What she discovered kept her awake for 72 consecutive hours as she grappled with the implications of what she was reading. The beacon was broadcasting detailed assessments of human technological capabilities, social organization structures, psychological profiles of our species, and most disturbing of all, predictions about our civilization's likelihood of successfully transitioning to interstellar-capable status within specific timeframes. According to the transmitted assessments, human civilization was classified as transitional species under evaluation for advancement assistance. The classification included detailed criteria that would determine whether humanity qualified for direct contact and technological transfer, or whether we would be left to develop independently with a high probability of eventual extinction. The evaluation criteria were brutally comprehensive. They assessed not only our technological sophistication, but our capacity for cooperation, our treatment of our planetary environment, our management of resource distribution, and our ability to resolve conflicts without resorting to weapons of mass destruction. Current human performance in these areas was rated at what Foster translated as marginally acceptable with concerning negative trends in multiple critical categories. We're being graded, Foster realized with growing horror, and we're failing. The beacon's real-time updates were tracking humanity's responses to climate change, nuclear proliferation, artificial intelligence development, social inequality, and international cooperation. Each category was weighted according to its impact on long-term species survival probability, and the composite score was being continuously updated and broadcast to whoever was monitoring the signal. But the most terrifying aspect of Foster's discovery wasn't the evaluation itself. It was the realization that the evaluation period had a deadline. Embedded within the beacon's signal was a timestamp indicating that the assessment period would conclude on March 15, 2026, exactly 127 days after 3I Atlas's closest approach to Earth. On that date, based on humanity's composite evaluation score, decisions would be made about our species' future relationship with what appeared to be a galactic community of advanced civilizations. The implications were clear and urgent. Humanity had approximately 4 months to demonstrate that we were capable of the kind of cooperation, wisdom, and technological responsibility that would qualify us for continued existence as an independent civilization. Dr. Foster's discovery reached the underground network at the same time that Dr. Yuki Tanaka was making an equally disturbing realization about the technological blueprints embedded in 3I Atlas's gravitational wave transmissions. Tanaka had been working with a team of theoretical physicists to decode the exotic matter manipulation instructions when they discovered that the blueprints weren't complete. Critical components of the technology were missing, replaced with what appeared to be placeholder variables that could only be filled in through direct communication with whoever had created the original designs. "It's not a gift," Tanaka reported to the network in his encrypted communication. "It's a demonstration of what's available if we prove ourselves worthy of receiving it. They're showing us what we could have, but they're not giving us enough information to build it independently." The incomplete blueprints served multiple purposes. They proved that technologies capable of solving humanity's most pressing problems were possible and achievable. They provided enough detail to show human scientists which directions to pursue in their own research. But they also ensured that access to the complete technologies would require ongoing cooperation with whoever was conducting the evaluation. It was, in essence, a technological leash designed to encourage good behavior while preventing independent development of capabilities that might be used destructively. This discovery led Dr. James Wellington to a chilling realization about the nature of the test humanity was undergoing. The evaluation wasn't simply about whether humans deserved access to advanced technologies. It was about whether our species could be trusted with capabilities that could potentially threaten other civilizations. "Think about what these technologies represent," Wellington wrote in his analysis. "Exotic matter manipulation could be used to create weapons of unprecedented destructive power. Gravitational control could be used to devastate planetary surfaces or deflect asteroids toward inhabited worlds. Time manipulation could be used to launch attacks before defenders could respond." From the perspective of an advanced galactic civilization, giving these technologies to a species like humanity would be equivalent to giving nuclear weapons to medieval armies. The potential for catastrophic misuse would be enormous. Wellington's analysis suggested that the evaluation period wasn't just about determining whether humanity deserved technological assistance. It was about assessing whether our species could be safely integrated into a larger galactic community without posing a threat to existing civilizations. This interpretation explained why the evaluation criteria focused so heavily on cooperation, conflict resolution, and responsible resource management. These weren't arbitrary standards imposed by benevolent aliens trying to help humanity improve. They were security assessments conducted by practical entities trying to determine whether humans could be trusted with technologies that could reshape the balance of power across interstellar distances. The realization that humanity was essentially undergoing a security clearance evaluation for access to galactic civilization added new urgency to the underground network's efforts to understand and respond to the 3I Atlas phenomenon. Dr. Robert Kim began analyzing the timing and positioning of other astronomical objects that had been observed during 3I Atlas's approach, looking for evidence of additional monitoring systems that might be conducting concurrent evaluations of human behavior. What he discovered suggested that the 3I Atlas mission was part of a much larger and more systematic observation program that had been monitoring human civilization for far longer than anyone had suspected. Retrospective analysis of astronomical data from the past 50 years revealed the presence of at least 17 objects that had exhibited anomalous characteristics similar to those displayed by 3I Atlas. Most had been dismissed as equipment malfunctions, measurement errors, or unusual but natural phenomena. But when analyzed together using the knowledge gained from studying 3I Atlas, clear patterns emerged. Each of the 17 objects had appeared during periods of significant human technological or social development. The first had been detected in 1969 during the Apollo moon landing program. Others had appeared during the development of the Internet, the Human Genome Project, the deployment of GPS satellite networks, and the launch of the Large Hadron Collider. We've been under systematic observation for at least 5 decades, Kim concluded. 3I Atlas wasn't first contact. It was a graduation exam. The historical observation pattern suggested that an advanced civilization had been monitoring human development since we first demonstrated the capability to leave our planet. Each major milestone in human technological advancement had triggered increased scrutiny and evaluation. The fact that 3I Atlas had represented such an obvious and dramatic demonstration of advanced capabilities suggested that humanity had reached a critical decision point in this long-term evaluation process. We had developed enough to warrant serious consideration for advancement, but we had also reached a level of technological capability where our future development could pose risks that required careful management. Dr. Elena Vasquez, working from her forced exile from official research, began analyzing the social and political responses to 3I Atlas in relation to the evaluation criteria that Foster had decoded from the gravitational beacon. What she discovered was deeply disturbing. The immediate classification and suppression of 3I Atlas research by governments around the world was scoring negatively across multiple evaluation categories. The secretive, militaristic response demonstrated exactly the kind of tribalistic thinking and information hoarding that the evaluation criteria identified as incompatible with membership in an advanced galactic civilization. Our governments are systematically failing the test, Vasquez reported. Every time they classify research data, suppress scientific communication, or prioritize national security over species-wide cooperation, they're demonstrating that humanity isn't ready for the responsibilities that come with advanced technology. The evaluation criteria specifically penalized civilizations that treated contact with advanced intelligence as a military threat rather than a scientific opportunity. They rewarded species that responded to such contact with increased international cooperation, open scientific inquiry, and transparent communication with their entire population. Human governments were doing exactly the opposite. The underground network found itself in an impossible position. They possessed evidence of contact with an advanced galactic civilization, proof that humanity was under evaluation for technological advancement, and knowledge that our governmental responses were systematically sabotaging our chances of passing that evaluation. But any attempt to publicize this information would be immediately suppressed by the same governmental agencies that were already failing the test. The scientists who understood what was happening were powerless to influence the political processes that would determine humanity's ultimate fate. Dr. Catherine Mills proposed a desperate solution that divided the underground network into factions that would struggle with fundamental ethical questions for weeks to come. "We need to bypass our governments entirely," Mills argued in her encrypted communication to the network. "If official channels are systematically failing the evaluation, then we need to establish direct communication with whoever is monitoring the beacon. We need to show them that at least part of humanity understands what's happening and is capable of the cooperation and wisdom they're looking for. Mills's proposal involved using the technological blueprints provided by 3i Atlas to construct a basic gravitational wave transmitter capable of sending messages directly to the beacon. Such a device would require international cooperation between research facilities, sharing of classified information, and deliberate violation of government secrecy orders. But it would also demonstrate exactly the kind of species-wide scientific cooperation that the evaluation criteria identified as essential for advanced civilization membership. The proposal split the underground network into 3 factions that reflected different philosophical approaches to humanity's dilemma. The first faction, led by Mills, advocated for immediate construction of the communication device and direct contact with the evaluating civilization. They argued that demonstrating scientific cooperation and species-level thinking was more important than respecting governmental authority that was actively sabotaging humanity's chances of survival. The second faction, led by Dr. al-Rashid, worried that such direct action could be interpreted as representative of human civilization as a whole without proper democratic authorization. They argued that no small group of scientists had the right to speak for all humanity in such a critical communication. The third faction, led by Wellington, suggested that the evaluation might itself be a test of humanity's ability to navigate complex ethical and political challenges. They proposed that the correct response was to find ways to educate and influence government policy rather than circumventing democratic processes entirely. The debate within the underground network reflected larger questions about leadership, representation, and authority during periods of existential crisis. If humanity's official governing institutions were failing a test that could determine our species' survival, what ethical obligations did individual scientists have to take independent action? These questions became even more urgent when Dr. Foster discovered additional information embedded in the gravitational beacon signal that revealed the consequences of failing the evaluation. Species that failed to demonstrate readiness for technological advancement weren't simply ignored and left to develop independently. They were actively prevented from achieving interstellar capability through systematic intervention designed to maintain their isolation from galactic civilization. The intervention protocols ranged from subtle manipulation of technological development to more dramatic measures including redirection of asteroid impacts, triggering of supervolcanic eruptions, and in extreme cases, controlled depletion of planetary resources that would prevent achievement of spaceflight capability. If we fail this evaluation, Foster reported, we won't just miss an opportunity for advancement, we'll be actively prevented from ever leaving this planet. Earth will become a permanent prison designed to contain a species that was judged too dangerous to be allowed into galactic civilization. The revelation that failure could result in permanent imprisonment on Earth added desperate urgency to the underground network's debates about appropriate responses to the evaluation. Meanwhile, analysis of the technological blueprints was revealing additional aspects of the test that humanity was undergoing. Dr. Tanaka discovered that the incomplete blueprints weren't randomly missing information. The missing components were specifically those that would be required to weaponize the technologies or use them for purposes that could threaten other civilizations. The exotic matter manipulation techniques included detailed instructions for energy generation and propulsion applications, but the sections dealing with weapons applications had been completely removed. The gravitational control technologies provided blueprints for spacecraft propulsion and planetary engineering, but nothing that could be used to create gravitational weapons. They're testing whether we'll try to fill in the missing pieces ourselves, Tanaka realized. If we focus our research on developing the peaceful applications of these technologies, it demonstrates wisdom and trustworthiness. If we immediately start trying to figure out how to weaponize them, it proves we're not ready for advancement. This realization led to a disturbing discovery about how some government research programs were responding to the classified 3i Atlas data. Through sources within various national laboratories, the underground network learned that multiple countries had immediately begun research programs focused specifically on understanding the weapons applications of the exotic technologies. Rather than pursuing the peaceful energy and propulsion applications that could solve climate change and enable interstellar travel, government scientists were being directed to determine how the technologies could be used for military advantage. The irony was staggering. At the exact moment when humanity needed to demonstrate wisdom, cooperation, and peaceful intentions to pass the most important test in our species' history, our governments were proving that we deserved to fail by immediately trying to turn contact with advanced civilization into an opportunity for military advantage. Dr. Santos, monitoring these developments from her forced exile, began documenting what she termed the systematic sabotage of human advancement by institutional stupidity. Every day that our governments focus on military applications instead of cooperative development, Santos wrote, every day that they suppress scientific communication instead of encouraging international research collaboration, every day that they treat this as a national security issue instead of a species survival opportunity, they're actively reducing our chances of passing the evaluation. We're watching our own institutions destroy our future because they're incapable of thinking beyond the primitive territorial conflicts that have defined human politics for millennia. Santos's analysis identified a fundamental mismatch between the evolutionary timeline of human political institutions and the timeline of technological development that had led to our current crisis. Our governmental and military structures had evolved to manage conflicts between competing tribes and nations, but the challenges posed by contact with galactic civilization required thinking and cooperation at the species level. Human political institutions were literally incapable of responding appropriately to the three-eye atlas phenomenon because such institutions had never evolved to handle species-level threats or opportunities. They were designed for managing local resource conflicts, not for navigating relationships with entities possessing technologies that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. This institutional inadequacy became even more apparent as December progressed, and additional governments began developing their own classified response programs to the three-eye atlas data. Intelligence reports reaching the underground network suggested that several countries were attempting to reverse engineer the exotic technologies independently, viewing them as opportunities to gain strategic advantages over their terrestrial rivals. The possibility that these technologies could enable solutions to global problems like climate change and resource scarcity was being ignored in favor of potential military applications. Even worse, some national programs were apparently attempting to develop technologies that could interfere with or destroy the gravitational beacon, viewing it as a surveillance device planted by a potential enemy rather than an evaluation system created by an advanced civilization offering unprecedented opportunities for human advancement. They're not just failing the test, Wellington observed with growing despair. They're actively attacking the testing apparatus. It's like responding to a university entrance exam by trying to bomb the admissions office. The underground network found itself racing against time to find ways to demonstrate to the evaluating civilization that at least some members of humanity understood the true nature of what was happening and were capable of the wisdom and cooperation required for galactic civilization membership. Dr. Mills's proposal for direct communication became increasingly attractive as evidence mounted that governmental responses were systematically sabotaging humanity's chances of advancement. But implementing the communication plan would require unprecedented cooperation between research facilities across international boundaries, sharing of classified technological information, and acceptance of personal risks that could include imprisonment for violating national security laws. The scientists of the underground network found themselves facing the ultimate test of their commitment to the advancement of human knowledge and the survival of their species. They could remain silent and watch their governments destroy humanity's greatest opportunity, or they could take independent action that would demonstrate the exact qualities that the evaluation criteria identified as essential for advanced civilization membership. The deadline of March 15, 2026 was rapidly approaching, and with each passing day, it became increasingly clear that humanity's official institutions were incapable of rising to meet the challenge that would determine whether our species had a future among the stars or would remain forever imprisoned on a single planet, isolated from the vast community of intelligence that inhabited the galaxy. The choice facing the underground network of astronomers was no longer just about scientific ethics or governmental authority. It was about whether they would accept responsibility for speaking on behalf of human potential when humanity's official representatives were proving themselves unworthy of that trust. The fate of human civilization was about to be determined by a small group of scientists working in secret, using stolen data and borrowed equipment to attempt contact with an intelligence that could reshape the destiny of our entire species, and they had less than 4 months to succeed. The construction of humanity's first gravitational wave transmitter began in absolute secrecy on December 18, 2025, in the abandoned subway tunnels beneath Geneva, Switzerland. The location had been chosen by Dr. Catherine Mills for its proximity to CERN's facilities, its natural electromagnetic shielding, and its symbolic significance as a place where international scientific cooperation had already proven that human beings could transcend national boundaries in pursuit of knowledge. The transmitter project represented the most ambitious act of scientific rebellion in human history. 17 research facilities across 11 countries had agreed to participate, contributing classified technological data, stolen equipment, and personnel who understood that they were risking their careers, their freedom, and possibly their lives to attempt direct communication with an intelligence that possessed the power to determine humanity's cosmic future. Dr. Mills had named the project Prometheus Unbound, after the mythological figure who stole fire from the gods to benefit humanity. The parallel was uncomfortably accurate. The underground network was attempting to steal advanced technology from beings who might indeed be considered gods by human standards, and they were doing so in defiance of every human authority that claimed jurisdiction over such matters. The transmitter design was based on the incomplete blueprints extracted from 3I Atlas's gravitational wave emissions, but building a functional device required filling in technological gaps that pushed human engineering capabilities to their absolute limits. The exotic matter manipulation components alone required precision manufacturing at the quantum level, using techniques that existed only in theoretical papers published by researchers who had been subsequently silenced by government security agencies. Dr. Yuki Tanaka led the exotic matter fabrication team, working from a hidden laboratory established in the basement of the University of Tokyo's physics department. His team had managed to create stable negative energy states for microsecond durations using controlled quantum field fluctuations, but scaling the process to provide sufficient exotic matter for a functional gravitational wave transmitter required innovations that challenged the fundamental assumptions of quantum field theory. "We're trying to build God-level technology using Stone Age manufacturing capabilities," Tanaka reported during one of the project's encrypted coordination meetings. "It's like trying to construct a computer processor using nothing but hammers and chisels. The fact that we're making any progress at all suggests that whoever designed these blueprints deliberately included enough redundancy and error tolerance to account for our primitive manufacturing limitations." The deliberate error tolerance in the blueprints provided additional evidence that the evaluating civilization had anticipated exactly this kind of unauthorized construction project. They had apparently expected that some faction of humanity would attempt to build communication devices using the provided technology, and they had designed the blueprints to make such construction possible while remaining technically challenging enough to demonstrate genuine scientific capability. Dr. Amanda Foster, coordinating the project's gravitational field manipulation components from her exile in a remote research station in Antarctica, discovered that the blueprints included subtle guidance systems that seemed designed to prevent dangerous mistakes during construction. Critical components that could have catastrophic failure modes were protected by what appeared to be built-in safety limitations that would prevent accidental creation of black holes, temporal paradoxes, or space-time tears. "They're not just providing us with technology," Foster realized. "They're providing us with training wheels. Everything about these blueprints suggests that they were designed for a civilization that's advanced enough to understand the principles, but primitive enough to make potentially devastating construction errors." The safety features embedded in the blueprints served multiple purposes. They demonstrated the evaluating civilization's understanding of human technological limitations and their concern for preventing accidental disasters during the construction process. But they also provided additional evidence that humanity was being carefully guided through a controlled advancement process rather than simply being tested and evaluated. Dr. Robert Kim, working from a hidden facility established in the Atacama Desert to take advantage of the region's natural radio silence, made a discovery that fundamentally changed the underground network's understanding of their situation. Analysis of radio telescope data from the past 6 months revealed that 3I Atlas hadn't been the only artificial object in Earth's vicinity during the evaluation period. At least 7 additional objects had been detected exhibiting anomalous characteristics consistent with advanced technology, but their signals had been far more subtle and had been dismissed as background noise or equipment artifacts by official research programs. The additional objects appeared to be monitoring stations positioned at strategic points throughout the solar system to provide comprehensive observation coverage of Earth and its immediate space environment. Unlike 3I Atlas, which had been designed to demonstrate advanced capabilities in an obvious manner, the monitoring stations were clearly intended to remain undetected while collecting detailed information about human responses to the evaluation. "We're not just being tested," Kim reported to the network. "We're being watched continuously by multiple observation platforms that are recording every aspect of our technological, social, and political responses to the 3I Atlas demonstration. Our construction of this transmitter is itself being monitored and evaluated as part of the test." The realization that their rebellion was itself a component of the evaluation added new complexity to the underground network's efforts. Were they demonstrating human independence and scientific capability, or were they simply fulfilling another predetermined aspect of the testing protocol? Dr. James Wellington, analyzing the psychological aspects of the evaluation process, concluded that the ambiguity was itself part of the test design. Any sufficiently advanced civilization would understand that the most meaningful test of a species' readiness for galactic membership would involve scenarios where the species couldn't be certain what response was expected or desired, Wellington observed. "If we knew exactly what we were supposed to do, we would just be following instructions rather than demonstrating genuine character and capability. The fact that we can't be certain whether our rebellion is part of the test or genuinely independent action means that we have to make choices based on our actual values and principles, rather than trying to calculate what response would produce the desired evaluation results." Wellington's analysis provided philosophical justification for continuing the transmitter project, but it didn't resolve the practical challenges that were threatening to derail construction before the March 15th deadline. The most serious obstacle wasn't technological, but logistical. Building a functional gravitational wave transmitter required coordination between research facilities that were being actively monitored by government security agencies. Moving equipment, personnel, and information between locations without detection was becoming increasingly difficult as various national security organizations began to suspect that classified 3I Atlas data was being shared through unauthorized channels. Dr. Elena Vasquez, operating from a secret facility established in the Chilean Andes, reported that her team had detected surveillance devices planted in their laboratory equipment. Dr. Hassan al-Rashid discovered that his communications were being monitored by at least 3 different intelligence agencies. Several members of the underground network reported being approached by government agents offering lucrative positions in classified research programs in apparent attempts to co-opt their expertise. The government pressure intensified dramatically in January 2026, when intelligence agencies in several countries apparently concluded that the unofficial research network posed a threat to national security interests. Raids were conducted on research facilities in Germany, Japan, and Australia. Equipment was confiscated, research data was destroyed, and several prominent astronomers were detained for questioning about their involvement in unauthorized analysis of classified astronomical data. Dr. Maria Santos, monitoring these developments from her hidden location in the Brazilian rainforest, documented what she termed the systematic criminalization of scientific inquiry in response to the greatest discovery in human history. "Our governments are treating the scientists who understand the true significance of 3I Atlas as enemy agents," Santos wrote in her analysis. "They're criminalizing exactly the kind of international scientific cooperation that the evaluation criteria identify as essential for galactic civilization membership. Every raid they conduct, every scientist they arrest, every communication they intercept, provides additional evidence to the evaluating civilization that humanity is not ready for advancement." The government crackdown created a terrible irony for the underground network. The more aggressively their governments suppressed their work, the more urgent their mission became. If official human institutions were systematically failing the evaluation, then unauthorized scientific cooperation represented humanity's last hope for demonstrating readiness for galactic civilization membership. But the same government actions that made their mission more urgent also made it more difficult to accomplish. By February, the underground network had lost access to approximately half of their originally planned research facilities, and several key team members had been arrested or forced into hiding. The transmitter project was forced to relocate multiple times as government agents closed in on their operations. The exotic matter fabrication laboratory was moved from Tokyo to a hidden facility in rural Mongolia. The gravitational field manipulation equipment was transferred from Antarctica to an abandoned research station in Greenland. The central coordination hub was relocated from Geneva to a secret facility established in the Sahara Desert. Each relocation cost precious time and resources that the project couldn't afford to lose. But the relocations also demonstrated exactly the kind of adaptive international cooperation that suggested humanity might possess the resilience and determination required for galactic civilization membership, even if official governmental responses indicated the opposite. Dr. Tanaka's team achieved a major breakthrough in exotic matter stabilization during the third week of February, successfully maintaining negative energy states for periods exceeding 30 minutes. The breakthrough came through collaboration between theoretical physicists in Japan, Mongolia, and Brazil, sharing data through encrypted quantum communication channels that had been established using principles extracted from the 3I Atlas blueprints. "We're not just building a transmitter," Tanaka reported during an encrypted coordination meeting. "We're developing genuinely new physics by combining advanced theoretical frameworks provided by the evaluating civilization with human engineering innovation and international scientific cooperation. This project is demonstrating that humanity can successfully integrate advanced knowledge when our political institutions don't interfere with the process." The exotic matter breakthrough enabled completion of the transmitter's core components, but assembly of the final device required bringing together personnel and equipment from multiple hidden facilities in a single location for the complex integration and calibration procedures. Dr. Mills selected a location in the Atacama Desert of Chile, choosing a site that offered natural electromagnetic isolation, minimal government surveillance, and symbolic significance as the location of some of Earth's most advanced astronomical observatories. The final assembly would take place within walking distance of telescopes that had detected some of humanity's most important astronomical discoveries, creating a direct link between traditional human scientific achievement and this unprecedented attempt at interstellar communication. The convergence of personnel and equipment in the Atacama Desert represented the culmination of the most complex, unauthorized scientific project in human history. 17 research teams from 11 countries had managed to coordinate their efforts across international boundaries, government surveillance, and active suppression efforts to create technology that would have been considered impossible just months earlier. But as February turned to March, the underground network discovered that their efforts had not gone unnoticed by the intelligence agencies trying to suppress unauthorized research into the 3I Atlas phenomenon. Satellite surveillance images had apparently revealed the unusual concentration of scientific equipment in the Atacama Desert. Government agents from multiple countries were converging on the region with the apparent intention of shutting down the transmitter project just days before the March 15th evaluation deadline. Dr. Foster, monitoring government communications through techniques she had learned from the 3I Atlas signal analysis protocols, discovered that at least 3 countries were planning coordinated raids on the transmitter site for March 12th, 3 days before the evaluation deadline. "They're not just trying to stop us," Foster reported to the network. "They're trying to ensure that we can't complete our work before the evaluation period ends. Our own governments are actively sabotaging humanity's last chance to demonstrate species-level scientific cooperation." The impending raids forced the underground network to accelerate their timeline dramatically. The transmitter device would have to be completed, tested, and used for actual communication with the evaluating civilization within 72 hours, using procedures that had been planned to require at least 2 weeks of careful preparation. Dr. Wellington, analyzing the impossible timeline requirements, realized that success would require a level of international scientific cooperation that had never been achieved under normal circumstances. much less during a crisis situation with government agents closing in from multiple directions. This is the ultimate test, Wellington concluded. Can human beings cooperate effectively enough to accomplish something unprecedented under extreme pressure while being actively opposed by their own institutional authorities? If we can pull this off, we'll have demonstrated exactly the kind of species-level thinking and scientific capability that the evaluation criteria identify as essential for galactic civilization membership. The final 72 hours before the evaluation deadline would determine not just whether the underground network could successfully contact the evaluating civilization, but whether humanity possessed the fundamental characteristics required for survival and advancement in a universe populated by intelligences that could manipulate the basic forces of reality. On March 12th, as government agents began surrounding their positions in the Atacama Desert, the scientists of the underground network initiated the final assembly procedures for humanity's first gravitational wave transmitter, knowing that they had less than 3 days to contact an alien intelligence and convince them that the human species deserved a future among the stars. The fate of human civilization now depended on whether a small group of rebellious scientists could complete the most ambitious technological project in human history while being hunted by their own governments, using plans provided by entities whose motivations remained fundamentally mysterious. The transmitter's first activation was scheduled for March 14th at 23:47 UTC, exactly 24 hours before the evaluation deadline. If successful, it would mark the moment when humanity officially announced its readiness to join the galactic community of advanced civilizations. If unsuccessful, it would mark the beginning of permanent isolation for a species that had failed to demonstrate the wisdom and cooperation required for cosmic citizenship. The underground network had one last chance to prove that human beings could rise above their primitive political divisions and work together for the survival and advancement of their entire species. Everything that had happened since 3I Atlas first appeared in Earth's skies had led to this moment of ultimate testing. In less than 72 hours, humanity would discover whether it had a future beyond the boundaries of a single world, or whether Earth would become a permanent prison for a species deemed too dangerous and too primitive to be trusted with technologies that could reshape the galaxy. The answer would be determined by whether the most ambitious act of scientific rebellion in human history could succeed in the face of opposition from every official institution that claimed authority over humanity's response to contact with advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. The countdown to humanity's cosmic future had begun.